Okay, I'm gonna try to explain that last video I did better. A lot of times I just ramble, but I'm sick and I like lose my train of thought a lot of times, right? So I'm gonna try to explain the difference between a casual video game fan and the difference between a casual fighting game fan, right? And I think what a lot of video game companies are trying to do is actually try to appeal to a casual video game fan. And the casual video game fan doesn't care about fighting games, okay? You should be trying to appeal to the casual fighting game fan, right? So again, let's go back to history, right? Street Fighter 2 comes out. Even though Street Fighter 2 obviously is the second game, right? Street Fighter 2 is not the first fighting game, but in society's mind, from a certain perspective, as a human being in a way, Street Fighter is the first fighting game, right? So if we were to talk about the different video games, right? We have RPGs, hentai games, whatever. I already said hentai games, right? A sports game, an RPG, a fighting game, whatever, right? Well, I've said before, Street Fighter 2, apparently according to inflation, is like the third biggest video game of all time, actually, right? So that's huge, right? Part of that is luck, but part of that luck as well is that it is, again, from a certain perspective, the first fighting game, right? The first genre, because as a human being, when you see something new, you're like, oh, what is this new thing? We know what video games are, but like, hey, although it isn't technically a new thing, it's not the first fighting game from a certain psychological society perspective, cultural perspective, it is the first fighting game because you're like, whoa, what is this new thing that everyone is playing, right? So just that by nature probably contributed to Street Fighter's, you know, sales, right? Because we're like, whoa, what is this thing that everyone is playing? And then you got to remember, just not Street Fighter 2 was big. They're throwing out all these clone quotation mark video games as well, riding off the coattail, right? But after that, now it has been established what a fighting game is, what fighting games are about. And this is never going to change unless we reach a point in society where a fighting game is so fundamentally different. It's, say, something like a virtual reality fighting game where it's just we're doing something completely different. But for the most part, what a fighting game is already in our brain as a human being. So we know if we like this kind of game or not, right? If Jimmy over here is only jacking off to hentai or something like that, if he hates fighting games, Jimmy is not going to play a fighting game. He doesn't care. He doesn't like fighting games. You know what I mean? No, nothing you're going to do putting auto combos in it, one button DPs, one button wave dashing. No matter what you do, he's not going to play the fighting game because Jimmy just wants to jack off to hentai games. He doesn't care. Okay, he likes this kind of game. Just like I use the Call of Duty reference. You could put Pikachu in a Call of Duty game, right? Say like you squeeze Pikachu and he's like Pikachu and he shoots lightning bolts instead of shooting a machine gun. You could put Ryu and he throws Hadokens. It doesn't matter because, although I would laugh at that because that's kind of funny, I don't like Call of Duty games, so I'm not going to play it. So trying to appeal to a casual gamer is me doesn't appeal to me in that sense because I'm not a casual first-person shooter fan, right? Let's look at a game, and I'm like kind of going off like some of these like responses I made. Look at a game like Guilty Gear, like when we're trying to appeal to a casual fighting game fan, right? One of the reasons that Guilty Gear got so popular is because it actually was a complicated game, right? Like you see all these, oh, it's another fighting game, it's another fighting game, right? Guilty Gear didn't actually catch steam in the fighting game community because it's like, oh wow, this game is so easy, whatever, right? There's a little bit of it. It appealed to and I've talked about this psychologically when I go into game theory and other videos, right? It appealed to that nerd that thought they were special in a way. They're like, oh, you know what I mean? We found a new game, oh, this might be special for us, right? And then of course the nerd found out that being a nerd doesn't make you good at video games. But again, watch those videos to understand what I'm saying in that perspective. But Guilty Gear caught on because it actually was a complicated game, because Guilty Gear actually had a lot of goodwill, right? They're like, wow, there's actually more to this game. Why do people keep coming back to Guilty Gear? There's so many clones of different fighting games, but man, they keep coming back to Guilty Gear. There must actually be something to this game that we should keep playing it, right? Just like Street Fighter 2 is like, wow, why was Street Fighter 2? It's like, man, they keep going back to Street Fighter 2. There must be something about Street Fighter 2 that is making it popular, right? And again, there's a little bit of luck to everything, but there is also that idea like, wow, there's more shit to it. It's more complicated, right? You're not going to get, so again, what I'm getting at, you're never going to get the casual video game fan who doesn't like video games to play fighting games. He just doesn't like it, okay? But if he actually likes fighting games, the casual fighting game fan, you can get into games, okay? And there's never been a precedent, and we can look at the sales of games to see this, that making games easier has ever made people want to play. If you have a person who is on the fence about playing a fighting game, who's already likes fighting games, who's thinking about playing the fighting game, can you tell me you know many friends who are like, wow, I wasn't going to play that fighting game, but you put in auto combos. You put in one button DPs. You put in one button wave dash. You let me button map every single button. I was never going to play this game, but you put that in, so now I'm going to play it, right? It doesn't make sense. That's not how it works, Steve, right? So people, if anything, it's you want the games to be as complicated as possible because I've said this before. Considering that we live in such a society where people post on Twitter like, "Oh, I've never won a tournament," but I placed 15th in a tournament once. Sign me. Or I found this one combo that no one has ever done before. Supposedly, sign me. You know what I mean? Everyone's like trying to get that one little sliver of clout, no matter what they can do, right? To like say that somebody knows who they are, right? If your game is super easy, that's going to be even harder to find. If everyone's doing the same combo because everything's easy, that's going to be even harder for that kind of Jimmy to find that one thing that makes them feel special, right? Do you get what I mean? So making games easier has never brought in people because if a person likes fighting games, they're probably going to play fighting games, right? Do you get what I'm saying? And it's never been like, oh man, they put in the auto combo. Well, now I gotta play it, right? That's just not how things work. Not how video games work, dude. Do you know what I mean? They were probably already going to play the game in the first place, right? Now, how long they played the game is, a difference, right? And that's where I get into like, man, why did people keep playing Guilty Gear? Why did Guilty Gear get popular? Because, man, people kept playing it because they kept finding new shit, right? Like, man, there's just something more to this game. In this sea of clones of all these games, it's like, wow, Guilty Gear actually caught on steam because not only did it have a little bit of that, it appealed to a bit of a nerdy crowd. It actually appealed to people who like fighting games because they're like, wow, there's actually more shit to it. There's a lot of goodwill in this game, right? And of course, they keep dumbing down games, and this isn't bringing in more people. These people, the idea that you can make a game easier, so oh, this person might win a little bit more, or whatever, it's not actually contributing to the sales, right? Do you know what I'm saying? And Dragon Ball Z, I use that as an example of like a IP because that is an IP that say, oh, people like Dragon Ball. You know what I mean? So people are going to play it even if the game sucked, right? So that's why it was actually a good opportunity to make the game complicated, to not put in easy things because people are going to want to play it anyway. Look at all these games like say, Marvel vs. Capcom. You know what I mean? That brought in a little bit of that crowd, just a smidge, who maybe they're just a little bit of a casual fighting game fan, but they're like, wow, now I can actually play Marvel games. Like, you know what? I actually do want to play this. I'm gonna go out of my way and buy it. So, I'm like, I don't really play a lot of fighting games, but I enjoy the thought of them. But man, now I can play all my Marvel characters, so now I'm gonna get it. But if it's a Marvel fan or whatever kind of IP, it's like I hate these kind of games. I don't care. Nothing you can do. Rogue could be jacking me off, and Psylocke is sticking something up my fucking butthole, whatever, dude. It doesn't matter because they don't like those kind of games. But if it's a casual fan of fighting games in the first place, there is a potential to actually get them to play a game. And that's what you should be trying to do. You need games to be complicated because the easy aspect of games, it doesn't matter because the person was probably going to play the game no matter what, right? Does that make sense? Anyway, I think I said that a little bit better this time.